This is The Micro Effect. The Micro Effect Broadcasting Network.
My guest tonight, Dr. Dean Lloyd, comes to you from the great state of Colorado. Dr. Dean, thank you so much for joining me on this beautiful Thursday. How have you been?
I've been good, True. Good to hear your voice.
Hi. I'm glad you can hear my words.
That's right.
Oh, golly, let me just give
some
more of an intro to you if I can, Dr. Dean. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Dean Lloyd has a company called Accutone. Now, you've heard of something called acupuncture. Well, we're going to talk about the ancient Chinese, way ancient practice of stimulating nerve meridians with very sharp needles. That's called acupuncture. Dr. Dean Lloyd is very, very skilled in that, and he's found out some amazing things, ladies and gentlemen. It has to do with not only exercising the nerve points and meridians of the cell, but you can do the same thing with sound, with tones, with frequencies. We're going to go and teach you all about that tonight. Stay awake, stay alert, and please, ladies and gentlemen, take some notes tonight. Dr. Dean, anything else you want to add to that introduction?
Yes, we're in part of the season right now. It's midsummer, and I'll be talking about the seasons tonight and how it relates to our transition. Our cells make a transition, and the Chinese feel that it's healthy to have an awareness into these transitions in the seasons. And when we go into late summer, which will be just around the corner, which is the only difference in our Western way of thinking of 4 seasons. The Chinese actually have what is called 5 seasons. Their summer season is split into 2. And this, incidentally, is what is referred to as late summer. The heart controls the late summer. The summer, and then the stomach and the spleen control the late summer. So what I'm going to be talking about tonight will hopefully give you and your listeners a little review for you, True, but certainly helpful, I think, as we all go into one transition to the next as far as seasonal shifts go, and how we can align ourselves more clearly to what the seasons offer us vibrationally. No one seems to be talking about what that's about. We have seasons that are related to holidays, right? When it's fall time, a lot of people associate that with football. A lot of times people, when they think of winter, they think of Christmas. A lot of times people think of spring, they think of Easter. So these are things that are mentally, part of our culture, or they're part of the way we're brought up. But what I'm going to do tonight is hopefully give a little bit a clear perspective of how nature makes its transition and how those frequencies that I can offer you. I've gone into this. I've gone into science. I wrote the book. It's a book I don't mind saying. I know it's me saying it, but you can't drive a molecule through it. It is part of what nature has designed for us. And what my work has been is to break the code, reveal it, and then realign ourselves to what that's about. What's happiness? What does the cell do when it's happy? When it's quenched its thirst, when it's got its nutrients, when it's receiving signals, how is it going to respond? What does that mean? And I have some answers there, and I'm happy to share with you.
And we're back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Story Behind the Story. My guest tonight, Dr. Dean Lloyd from Colorado. So, Dr. Dean, as I was explaining and you were saying, the changes as we move in from summer into fall. Of course, you see it in nature. The leaves start to change, I was out fishing last weekend at Flaming Gorge Reservoir, and caught some kokanee salmon that were already starting to turn their red, and when they turn red like that, their heads turn a different shade of green, and it's just amazing how they do that. And the changes continue, to amaze me as you look in nature. The deer are starting to change their colors, as well as putting on their fall and winter coats. Their antlers are shedding. Their hormones are changing. What triggers all of this, Doctor?
The seasons have, because our genetics are designed to change, because we have inside us a little time clock that says, for women, it's time to be pregnant. For men, it's, that you go through puberty. There's a time clock inside of us. All animals are, in order to survive, they have to be in tune. I love that word, true. It's a word that I use a lot because intuition, the word in tune, is what that means, being in tune with each other. You get closer and closer to your partner in life. You become more psychic with them, more in tune with them. They're sending you messages, you pick it up. If you've ever heard the opposite end of that, like, you're not listening to me, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not listening. Well, something maybe that they're saying, either it rings true, maybe it's not. But what you're doing is you're communicating to each other, and the higher up you go, the more subtle these little messages become. The subtle messages.
Boy, that's interesting you said that, because I noticed that with my sweetheart more so in the last decade or so. We've been married going on close to 30 years now. We have our first grandchild, but we're sitting there, and it's a lot of times in the times where we're driving in the car, I'm driving, and I'm thinking of something, and my thoughts are my own, right? You think so? You think you're there? I was thinking about my wife. At this one, this is a classic example. She was going to shop for a pantsuit, okay, and I was thinking about her in a pantsuit, and I was thinking how she would look, and she started just talking to me. I'll try and make it a blue one, honey. And we looked at each other like, what? We weren't talking about this. We were in our own thoughts.
This is a good thing that you can do with any, someone you're close to, someone who feels you, someone who's in tune with you. They may not have to speak. And I present a thought, and it goes out to the universe. That comes up with a certain signature. Everything in nature has a signature. There's a natural signature in Chinese herbology. For example, in ginseng, you look at the ginseng root, it looks like a man, a human, or a person, and it has a kind of all-curing property that's in this natural signature. Now, there's things that are better to use ginseng for than others, but the natural signature is that it has something in it that looks and resembles nature and what it's intended for. And the seahorse is another. You think that Viagra had something new. Well, I got news for you. The Chinese had it figured out over 2,000 years ago, and the uncoiling tail is one example of opening and closing. That's the action of an erection. I'm just making one physical example of a natural signature. So what we have in nature with these, and I'm bringing this back to the seasonal question about changes, transitions that the animals make as these shifts occur. And the obvious thing is that, well, it reaches its peak, its pinnacle, and when it can't go anymore, then it starts to transition. And I'd like to give you a visual of that, in that if you have a swinging pendulum, and it goes from the very end, you started at the peak, okay, and then it swings at the very end, just like a swing set, right? You're swinging, you can't go any higher, and it reaches its peak, and then it comes back down, and it comes right passing the middle, okay, and coming back up. Now, what I've introduced to you is an example of how a pendulum moves as it creates a sine wave. You have what's called a node starting point, and then the apex, or the antinode, where it's the furthest away from the midpoint, just like a swing. You go past the midpoint, and then you pass the midpoint, you go to the farthest point, you come back down. That's what a sine wave is. That's a perfect wave. This is what is meant by what you were saying earlier, is the word, okay? The word comes through a wave form. If you draw an S, okay, and if you look at the yin-yang symbol, just as an example, you turn the S on its side, and you can draw an S right through the yin-yang symbol. That's how it came into being. It was not something that came out of the martial art first. It came out of a sine wave. They must have had some way of knowing this, because it ties into the entire Chinese medical system, which I'll be happy to tell you about after the break.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, indeed, interesting information about our origins, about our DNA, and about how our cells communicate. It's part of who you are. You better learn and listen and take notes tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, our special guest, Dr. Dean Lloyd, and I'll be right back after these messages. And welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the story behind the story. So, Dr. Dean, yes, indeed, the words we listen to, the songs, the music we listen to, all of these things make their way into our very DNA, don't they?
That's right, and I was just thinking about when you were walking in the woods, I came upon wild blueberries. Have you ever done that? Have you ever come up on a wild strawberry, wild raspberry, wild blueberry, some kind of berry?
Well, here in Utah, those are pretty scarce, and when you do find those it's usually in the higher, rough mountains, you better watch for bears, because they usually...
And they're sweet. Aren't they sweet if you ever come across them?
Yes, they are.
They're wonderful, and what I was going to make a connection with was that blue color is a corresponding frequency to a sound. And most of your listeners probably know that the color spectrum is a very high spectrum. It's in what we call terahertz, a very high, trillions of hertz, visibly, so that means cycles per second. And when we look at the color blue, we're actually looking at a frequency. We're looking at, it translates into a color. The blue color translates to frequency of D sharp. It's the audible frequency. Now, getting back to what we were talking about, this pendulum, is that when the sine wave is a pure tone, and there's no overtones involved with that, because in nature, every tone, even my voice, your voice, a conch shell, if you blow through it, a pitch pipe, a flute, a violin, whatever is making noise has overtones to it. And the overtone is a tone that is other than the frequency that is dominant, that goes through that particular pitch. For example, if you were to ring the Liberty Bell and you heard a pitch on it, you'll hear other tones in it, will you not?
Mm-hmm.
And if you do, then you're realizing that those other tones aren't quite as loud as the main tone. So what is significant about the sine wave frequency is that it doesn't have these overtones. And it is virtually impossible, it is impossible in nature to produce this. However, there is, as a wonderful invention in the 1700s, in fact, in Europe, there was an invention that was made to tune to standard of pitch, because all these orchestras were playing out of tune.
Mm-hmm,
and this invention was made